Metzing, City Attorney for Littleton.
Pam Grove, Littleton City Council at large.
Steve Barr, District 3.
Jerry Valdez, District 2, which is the northeast part of our city.
Sean Lewis, City Manager of Inglewood, and the mayor is dropping off a kid at school, and he'll be here shortly.
Tamara Niles, Inglewood City Attorney.
Rita Russell, Inglewood City Council Member at Large.
Gretchen Ryden, City Council Member in Littleton.
Chelsea Needenkamp, Inglewood City Council District 2.
Stephen Ward representing Inglewood Council District 4 and serving as Mayor Pro Tem.
Joe Anderson, Inglewood City Council, District 3.
Jim Woodward, City Council, Inglewood at large.
Tara Biter-Fleur, Sheridan, Mayor.
Evan Granberry, City Manager, Sheridan.
Kelly Melman, Littleton City Council.
And last but not least, we'll welcome as he walks in the door here.
It's all about timing.
Thanks for calling me out, Matt.
Your city manager did that already, so
Doesn't matter where I sit.
wherever you want. Apparently not next to Kelly though, she's.
I'll sit right next to you.
Thank you.
So I just wanted to let everyone know that we are recording the meeting just to keep record of it, so the cameras, wherever they are up around this are recording it, so just an FYI heads up, so you're aware. So yeah, we'll go through and just, we have the agenda here. If anyone didn't grab the agenda, there's a stack of them next to the names. We'll go through and do a little introduction for each city, and then we got some discussions about the Tri-Homeless Action Plan, affordable housing, and the Santa Fe PEL. So with Littleton, kind of some of the things that I'll talk about a little bit more later when we get to this, but one of the main things we'll be discussing, we have discussed the last few months and will come before us again, is an inclusionary housing ordinance. So I know that's one of the things that have been taking up staff's time, occupying staff's time and resources with that will have a first reading, I think is October 18th, and a public hearing on November 1st. I know there might be some other interest in what that looks like. One of the other big things that's kind of on our plates as well is some infrastructure investments off of our sales tax increase on the 2021 ballot with our 3A with our 0.75 cent increase. And so we're starting to get those funds in and identify projects to dedicate those funds and resources to, which is great for our community that we haven't had the resources in the past needed to address maintenance for our streets and medians and basic infrastructure and our buildings, and so that's exciting time for us here. Other thing that was kind of new in Littleton that previous council put kind of on our goals and objectives, and I know this council is moving forward, is our dedication to environmental sustainability and stewardship. And so this coming year, we will be putting together a citizen committee and potentially having a staff person devoted to that. I know Inglewood and Sheridan have focus on environmental sustainability, so there may be some ability to work together on that front, which would be great. As we all know, several small cities doing the exact same thing isn't the most efficient way to do it. So I know our staffs will be talking about that. Kind of going along with that infrastructure I mentioned before is, I don't know if anyone's aware that our downtown is probably going to get a facelift because Denver Water is going to come in and scrape off the top layer of the street there, and we're starting to work on a streetscape and mobility improvements for downtown. So that'll be a big project moving forward the next few months to next few years. So that's pretty exciting. And then coming up this November on the ballot, we have a lodger's tax on the ballot. So we're eagerly anticipating the vote on that. We feel confident. I think our polling showed there was a 70% approval for that. But as everyone in this room knows, you don't count all your eggs until the chickens till the eggs hatch, or whatever that saying is, something like that. Don't count all your ballot initiatives till they voted on it. But the funds are directed to go towards arts and culture, tourism, things like that. So that's kind of what's been going on here in Littleton. I don't know if I'm forgetting anything. So I'm going to turn it over to Inglewood Mayor to give a brief update on.
Can we go with Sheridan first?
Sheridan first?
Okay. just because we got a slide deck.
Thanks. I'm gonna hold off on housing and homelessness since we'll be talking about that later, but that's definitely one of our focus areas this year and for several years now. I'd say community engagement is another big area we're working on. We've had a public information officer now for a little over a year. I know she's been teaming up with your PIOs for a few things. And we're trying to expand our social media presence. She does that for both the city and for our PD. We've been promoting more community gatherings. We had a series of park events this summer, one in each ward, just to get people out and meeting their neighbors. And I know Inglewood did a similar thing this summer, so it's kind of nice to see we're all on the same page about wanting to get people together after COVID. So, and then we had our usual big festival a few weeks ago, but we are trying to just give people more opportunities and give them what they're looking for. So we're in the middle of a survey of what kind of events people would like to see from the city. We've been doing real-time and online translation for meetings. So we started the online translation during COVID and we're continuing with that just so we can make sure we're reaching the majority of our residents. And the police are engaging more with the community. Our newish chief, he's been with us also a little bit over a year, I think. He's very into community outreach, so he's been doing things a lot with the youth especially. He's done some like Fish with the Cop and the boxing program with a local business for kids. So, lots of different things that he's got going. And I'd say our other big focus area, like you said, Mayor Schlachter, was sustainability. So we've been kind of slow to get going on this, but and we've had some ongoing community involvement in sustainability. We have a Groundwork Denver Lieu team that does water testing. They do cleanup days. They go out in the community and go to the neighborhoods and do like energy efficiency assessments and rain barrels. So we've had some community engagement in sustainability, but I think the city's been a little bit behind the curve on it. We're trying to catch up now. As you said, we're gonna look at a potential shared sustainability coordinator with Inglewood. We've got an EV quick charging station that's gonna go in at City Hall. We are in the midst of improvements to our bus stops, so that's kind of a infrastructure / sustainability program. And we did a tree canopy analysis lately. We're gonna do a tree planting and had people vote on which trees they liked at Sheridan Celebrate so we can put in our order. So we'll be planting some new trees in spring. We have an air quality monitoring program now. I think it kind of kicked off from our library because they got one through their Love Your Air program, and now we're putting in additional monitors around the city. And we've also just purchased our first electric vehicle, so I think that's the most exciting one out of that list. It's just so cool to see it out there.
I almost wrecked it because you're driving along just looking at everything instead of where you're.
So that's what's going on in Sheridan.
Sierra?
Are we ready, Sean?
Sam's your driver. Thank
Okay.
you, Samo.
All right, morning, everyone. Thanks for having us. So yeah, we'll talk about, actually, I guess we got 4 things there that we want to cover today. So starting off is just the Complete Street project. So this encompasses our Old Hampton area. So basically it's the corner of Lafayette all the way down to Broadway. Are you able to shift the slides or? There we go. So basically, if you think of Lafayette is going to be basically the border of Inglewood and Cherry Hills Village. Somehow we got to figure out how to get Mayor Stewart to pay a portion of this as well, since it encompasses their entire commercial district. But we're going to go from Lafayette to Broadway. Obviously, the goal here is to improve the walkability, west-side mobility of that area around Swedish and Craig. Both are very involved in this project in terms of just making sure it meets the needs of patients within the area. So that's going to be the aspect of it. If we can move to the next slide. And so here's just some early designs in terms of what we may see here. So this is subject to change just because the path on the right-hand side, the 10-inch path, or excuse me, the 10-foot path. We have heard concerns from Swedish and Craig in terms of just having that area for cyclists and pedestrians. So we are gonna be looking at potential redesigns there as well. But here's really the crux of it, is just there's a lot of new businesses going into the area, there's a lot of new residentials. So we definitely want to just bring a more inviting feel here and just make it a lot easier to traverse the entire area, as well as connect it with the South Broadway and the city center areas, as this is one aspect of the entire DDA, which we started about 18 months ago. So actually, it's been 2 years almost now. So yeah, it's going to be one of the major items that we're working on. Here's another rendering. Better luck of the multi-use path. Obviously, having pedestrians and cyclists there may pose some issues. And it also may not be continuous throughout the entire South Broadway and City Center area. So we're going to have to look at that as well. Next slide, please. So just some of the projects that we're working on within the DDA. As I mentioned, that we formed about 2 years back. So the paseo and the alley improvements are happening now. Public art restoration, so that's going to be one aspect of this as well. But really just bringing a more inviting feel to South Broadway. During the holiday season, we'll have lights up as well through, actually I think we said it's going to be through February through March of next year to bring a little bit more friendly feel during the evening hours. Spring fall cleanups are going to be happening throughout the Wellness District as well as South Broadway. And then we are looking to partner with Swedish in terms of just bringing an area for the residents of that area to utilize green space. So there's not much there right now within the Wellness District, so a community park is something that we're looking at as well. Continuing on, multimodal is something really big to, definitely to me as well as members of council as well as the businesses in the area. The big one that we are talking about in terms of city center is that first one, the Little Dry Creek Greenway Trail. Not many people are aware, but there is a creek that was actually, we put asphalt over the top many years ago. We're trying to greenlight that, so to bring a little bit more, basically another open space area into the city center. So the DDA is looking in terms of grants to look at the feasibility plan of that. So that's something that we're hoping to start next year as well. And then vacant space activation, something that was done in Colorado Springs that we're looking to utilize as well. Obviously, we have a ton of parking lot within city center. And so we're wanting to see how we can rejuvenate that space. And so that's one of the ideas that we're looking at from other cities that have done something similar. Next slide. One of the big projects that we're working on now is just our Unified Development Code. We're currently in discussions about that. We're going to be having right now we're having input from community groups as well as city departments and just about everyone else. But really we're focusing on just not only housing but also multimodal, neighborhood design, all aspects of that. We're currently going to be discussing this heavily over the months of November and December and looking to have something in place by Q1 of next year. In terms of sustainability, we do, let me see, so we'll go through the timeline here. So we did adopt our first sustainability plan back in April of 2021. We transitioned our Keep Inglewood Beautiful commission, which is made up of citizens, transitioned them to the Sustainability Commission. So that happened in 21. We hired a coordinator. A lot of aspects that we've done with that sustainability. Obviously, that's a big topic for many cities. Something that I ran on back in 2018 as well. So we followed this timeline and we put a strategic plan in place back in April of 2022. And obviously, just the sustainability coordinator has been meeting with community groups in terms of what it is that they would like to see the city do, and just knock off some low-hanging fruit that possibly is available here in Inglewood. So here's some of our accomplishments, some of the goals and projects that we have in place, and as well as metrics. I think one of the things that I forgot to mention was, as part of the ICLEI group, We really didn't have a benchmark of what it is that we were looking to strive to, what our goal should have been. So as part of becoming a member of that group, they did give us access to their greenhouse gas inventory tool. And so it's allowing us to have benchmarks in order for us to meet some of the goals that we have in place that are what we think easy to achieve here in the next few years.
What is that group? What does that stand for, the IC?
IC, it stands for, let me see if I have the, do you remember what the name of that group is?
I
Or?
don't.
No,
I almost didn't let her put that in your slide.
it's like 2,500 cities and communities across the nation that are a part of this group, so. And then, in terms of what we're doing here, so the sustainability corner that we have in place today is really, I believe, 32 hours with the city of Inglewood. The city of Sheridan would like to partner with us in terms of having that coordinator on their side for the other 8 hours to make her a full-time position. So that's something that we have in place now today, correct? Did we?
No, in 2023.
We're almost.
We're almost there, right?
Almost there.
Yeah, so we're getting close. But yeah, obviously, this is something that that we're proud of, and look forward to partnering with Sheridan on this. And this is recent. I saw that the slides have not been updated since we did put them together at the end of September. But the sit line regulation is something that that we started discussing here in September. But obviously, the concern was just the fact that with the growing unhoused population that we've been seeing across the 3 cities, one of the concerns that we've been hearing was just the fact that there has been unhoused line across the sidewalk. So we had a discussion about this with our city attorney as well as the community members across our 3 cities about what we can do about this. So we did reach out to everyone in terms of what the best way to handle this would be. We could go to the next slide, but basically what it is that we did put legislation in place. We did adopt it on second reading on the 3rd, but in order to make it ADA compliant, because we do have a lot of older housing within the South Broadway area, it has been affecting people coming to, like King Supers and that type of area. So what we're doing is that we are going to be prohibiting lying on sidewalks. These are still able to use city property, city benches for that, but it will not be allowed within the sidewalks themselves. So it will be, it was adopted on the 3rd. It will be effective in mid-November. So those are the big items that we're working on right now. The other one that we actually didn't talk about, just because Mayor Schlechter, you kind of brought up the fact we are going to have 2 items in terms of additional funding on the ballot, additional taxes for our police department as well as the infrastructure as well. So those are 2 things that we didn't have on here, but they'll be on the November ballot.
Do any council members have any questions for other cities? If there's any clarification anyone want, I think now would be a good time to do that. Okay, is anyone still asleep? All right, well then, thank you.
Mayor,
Oh, yes,
I have
sorry.
a question. In terms of this sit-lie, it's the first time I've seen something kind of exactly like that. Did you get any pushback on from the community on that during your well, you're on second reading, right?
Oh, we passed the second reading.
Okay, so in terms of public comment.
No, so we did receive feedback from the community, from our business groups, and obviously everyone that participates in Tri-Cities. We did have a lot of discussion around it. Most of it was just making sure that we did have a place for the unhoused to go if it wasn't this. So we did have to make a couple of changes in terms of right-of-way, as well as allowing private property owners to use their space. They didn't want that to be affected as well. So we did receive comments, not necessarily pushback in terms of what we adopted, but there was communication.
And where can people go other than the benches? Was there specific places that the unhoused were?
Well, we didn't list specific places, but we did make clear that other city property was available. And then we're still looking at additional spaces that could be used for the population that we have in Inglewood today.
The church ordinance.
And the churches, yeah, exactly.
Any other questions or comments? All right, well then we can move on to the next item on the agenda, which is update on the Tri-Cities Homeless Action Plan from the Tri-Cities Coordinator. I'll introduce Michael Sangren here to get us through, and he's presented to every single council. We had him a study session a couple weeks ago. Has everyone else had a chance to meet with Mike?
I have not visited with Inglewood in this official capacity yet, and I have yet to visit with Sheridan. So this will be completely new information, I believe, for everybody except Littleton. I'll try to make it hopefully not too redundant.
We'll act surprised when we hear things.
Perfect. Yeah. The dress rehearsal was a couple weeks ago. Good morning, everybody. Good to be with you. Appreciate you all taking time to participate in a conversation like this, participate in a meeting like this. Appreciate the support that we've received around the Tri-Cities Homeless Action Plan, the broader initiative from all of you, from the councils. Excited to be here to provide an update and field some of your questions. I believe we have about a half hour allotted for this presentation. I will do my best to present for about 15 to 20 minutes and reserve some time at the end for dialogue, Q&A, and discussion. We have 3 objectives that I want to accomplish. I want to do my best to provide you all with an overall status update of the Tri-Cities Homelessness Action Plan implementation, of how it's going so far. We're a little over halfway through year 1 of implementation. I also want to brief you on the action steps that have been completed at this point in time and highlight some of the initial impact we're seeing from those completed action steps, as well as highlight for you all our current areas of focus within the plan. I believe you all are familiar with the action plan. It was constructed by the Tri-Cities Homelessness Policy Group. That group has been around since 2017, brought together elected officials, city managers, some county leadership, some other regional leadership, kind of are centered around crafting a response to homelessness. Mayor Biter-Fleur from Sheridan chairs that group currently, and Councilmember Anderson represents Inglewood, as well as Mayor Pro Tem Ryden represents Littleton on that group. That group engaged kind of a season of research through the years 2018, 2019, 2020, and then engaged a consultant to build on that research to build the Tri-Cities Homeless Action Plan, which was passed in 2021 and started to be implemented in 2022. The plan is broken into 4 categories, generally speaking, and then 11 recommendations and 30 action items. The action items kind of serve to guide the specific action within the plan. The categories focus on building a strong foundation, which focuses on formalizing a data-driven approach to guiding the allocation of homelessness resources, creating a community engagement and education strategy, as well as building a governance structure. The second category focuses on serving the needs of single adults who are experiencing homelessness, focusing on streamlining access to homeless services for single adults, providing street-based services to increase health and well-being on unsheltered residents, as well as expanding housing opportunities for single adults as they seek to exit homelessness. The third category focuses on investing in workforce development opportunities through creating partnerships with existing workforce programs, as well as creating employment opportunities for persons exiting homelessness, for folks who would kind of be on the path towards complete self-sustainability through workforce reentry. And then the final category focuses on serving the needs of families who are either experiencing homelessness or vulnerable to becoming homeless, focusing on streamlining access to homeless services, engaging in some preventative measures for families who are either at risk or currently experiencing homelessness, and as well as preventing families from becoming homeless, as well as increasing housing opportunities for families. The highest estimated budget for the plan would be $790,000 over 3 years. The plan is constructed to be have a 3-year implementation phase. This number doesn't necessarily include some of the expected capital expenses, for example, with some of the projects related to facility acquisition, renovation for some of our workforce programs, and navigation center, and so there are some capital related expenses within the action plan that aren't incorporated into this number. Like I said, the action plan is broken into 3 years. I won't spend too much time on these slides. I doubt you can read it anyway. But when I was onboarded into the coordinator position, we worked to kind of streamline a 3-year sequencing of plan implementation. So identified what we want to do in year 1, what we want to do in year 2 and year 3, and then we just developed a scoring mechanism to score each action step as either planned, meaning we haven't started working on it yet, either in progress, meaning we're actively working on that action item, or completed, meaning the action item has been completed. And so I'll show you. You can have these slides for reference at a later time, but our year 1 goals are here. Our year 2 goals are here. We also highlight the project sponsor, which kind of community partner or which city or which program would be taking point on implementing each of these action items, as well as year 3. You can see that it's intentional that the implementation kind of tapers to where year 3 we would be just launching 3 new objectives. That's by design because we anticipate even year 1, year 2 goals as they become completed will require quite a bit of ongoing maintenance and management as they're kind of out active in the community. So the tapering effect was intentional. To date, we have been able to score 8 action items within the overall action plan as completed, which amounts to 27% of the plan overall. We've seen the formalization of a regional leadership body. We feel strongly that the Tri-Cities Homelessness Policy Group meets that criteria to provide the appropriate governance to guide our region's response to the issue. That group meets monthly to set priorities, to guide the direction of the Tri-Cities Homelessness Initiative broadly. I, in the coordinator position, provide status updates on the action plan implementation each month, and then we regularly bring in other service providers and other stakeholders to present on their work to keep that group informed from a ground level standpoint on what's going on around homelessness in the community. We've also created the regional coordinator position. That position is the one that I'm occupying. So when I onboarded on July 5th of this year, we were able to score it as completed. That position's been constructed through an IGA between all 3 cities as well and Arapahoe County, to where the cities are splitting the bill for the position and the county's managing the position. So I'm employed through the Community Resources Department at the county in a role focused on implementing the Tri-Cities Action Plan. We've also seen an increase in our participation in our homeless management information system. This is a database that really serves our goals of being data-driven in our approach. It's a database managed by what's called our COC, the Metro Denver Homeless Initiative, that allows us to track real-time data around homelessness in the community. The big catch is that we have to get ground level service providers to actually enter client data into the HMIS system in order to track that data. When we started this initiative, we didn't have any providers who were entering client data into HMIS. Today we have at least 7 who are actively entering client data. So it's moving us in the direction of achieving what's called quality data, allowing us to keep track of homelessness on an ongoing basis. We've also seen an increase in the referrals to our One Home system, which is our local, for the Metro Denver, our coordinated entry system. We have, for example, our Inglewood Police case manager, as well as the county housing navigators, are actively completing the assessment to enter clients into that system. Unfortunately, this morning I'm not in a place to provide comprehensive data on the sum totals of folks who have been entered into that program, but we are starting to see anecdotally some of the impact of this action step. For example, one of the housing navigators at the county reported to me that they've seen 2 housing placements through the system just in the last couple months. And Inglewood case manager reported 8 housing placements last year through entries into that One Home system. We've also launched a partnership with the Built for Zero initiative. That's a nationwide effort managed by a nonprofit called Community Solutions, which utilizes a data-driven approach to resolve homelessness, focusing demographic by demographic. Metro Denver has been divided into different sub-regions. Tri-Cities is one sub-region within the broader metro area, And we have collectively decided to focus on veteran homelessness first. So using that model of case conferencing to produce, and our homeless management information system, our HMIS system, to produce what's called a by name list, which literally asks that database to kind of spit out a report of how many veterans are experiencing homelessness in our community. And then we bring a team of service providers together to literally walk through that list one by one and provide them the care they need and connection to services they need to move beyond homelessness. So we have an active case managing or case conferencing team. We've produced our initial veteran by name list. Currently there are 7 veterans on that list. 2 at this point have been placed into housing. 3 are actively being worked with, and then 2 we're conducting outreach to find them. We have also seen under our workforce programs, the launch of Cross Purpose, which is a 6-month career training program, serves housing vulnerable or recently housed individuals. Cross Purpose at full build out will manage 4 classes per year at a size of 50 people per class. Just recently, on August 29th of this year, they launched class number 2. They were able to populate that class with 32 participants. Class number 1, after their soft launch about a year ago, graduated 12. And Cross Purpose has some internal modeling that actually estimates the amount of wealth generated by their program participants. And so that class number 1 has generated at this point an estimated of just under $513,000 in wealth through the careers that they've been placed in as graduates of that program. If I can, I want to share one quick story. Some of you know I was, my previous role was on staff with the church that's partnering with Cross Purpose, and one of my roles was to oversee kind of a local resource center, food bank, meal program, med clinic, things like that. And there was a woman, I won't say her name for anonymity, but she, for several years, she was kind of frequenting our resource center and was in really rough shape. She was overly reliant on an abusive relationship for housing, kind of in and off the streets as the turbulence of that relationship took its shape. Mental illness, reliance on substances, kind of you name it. Really kind of challenging situation. We actually lost touch with her during the pandemic, and then when I went to the ribbon cutting for the Cross Purpose facility when they had finished their renovation, and I showed up, and my old boss pulled me aside and he's like, "Hey, did you see that this woman is now she's been accepted into class number 2?" And she was standing there with her all her classmates, standing tall in this program, getting placed into a career, getting case management support. And it was just really, really encouraging to see that some of the stories we're starting to see emerge from a program like that. We've also been doing work to support our local meal programs. I recently engaged a listening session with 6 food-based providers, 2 from each city. I heard themes of kind of a heightened clientele after the pandemic. The food meal programs kind of skyrocketed during the pandemic, and what I heard was that they've settled, but they've settled at a consistently higher rate in terms of clientele than pre-COVID numbers. And those meal programs highlighted 2 specific needs around volunteer support, which has been slower to reemerge than clients after the pandemic, as well as funding. And so in response, we will do some work to highlight those meal programs in our communication strategy, which I'll talk about in a second, as well as particularly the action items of streamlining volunteer and philanthropic opportunities exist within the action plan. And so we'll do our best to incorporate those meal programs into those action items. And then finally, just a couple weeks ago, we saw the launch of a coordinated outreach team in partnership with the All Health Network. All Health was awarded a federal PATH grant several months ago to develop and deploy a street outreach team focused on making contacts with individuals experiencing unsheltered homelessness. The goal is to make contact with, so imagine kind of camps wherever they pop up, or folks who are maybe staying in parks, things like that. This outreach team, the goal will be to make contact with them, build relationships, and ultimately make service referrals to those individuals, as well as offer entrance into the more formal PATH program, which would provide mental and behavioral health care directly to clients who are, while they're still experiencing homelessness. All Health has developed that program in conjunction with the Built for Zero framework, so they'll be entering client data into the HMIS system. They'll have a staff of 2 case managers, 1 peer support specialist, and a licensed therapist who will staff that program. And I think this is cool. They'll actually have a van at their disposal as well to provide transportation services to some of the services that they might refer folks to. So, for example, we're monitoring the initiative around the Ridgeview campus that the state is going after out in eastern Arapahoe County. Obviously, for a location like Tri-Cities, transportation is an issue there. How do you get somebody from the Broadway corridor to eastern Arapahoe County? Well, having an outreach team with a van is going to help with that. In terms of expenditures, we've seen three kind of expenditures: 2 capital expenditures, 1 in service of the general action plan. We've seen that IGA being developed to fund the coordinator position for 3 years. That's being funded through all of your ARPA dollars. So thank you. We've seen Inglewood dedicate some of their ARPA dollars to supporting cross-purposes facility renovation, as well as I know all of the councils are in various stages of conversation about ARPA allocations towards the Bridge House Ready to Work program that has recently acquired a facility and is gearing up to renovate that facility, to outfit it to host their program. We've also been working between county leadership and the city manager's offices to kind of build a broader financing structure for the action plan. We've had some conversation about possibly creating an addendum to the coordinator IGA to allocate some of the earmarked funds within some of the cities towards some of the specifics within the action plan as we move forward over the next couple of years. And then we're also monitoring closely some of the funding opportunities that are coming down specifically from the state. I think a lot of you know this past year's legislative session saw quite a bit of funding allocated towards homelessness. That's in the process of being transferred into grant programs under the branding of a transformational homelessness response grant program, as well as a transformational affordable housing grant program. The DOLA's goal is to start open applications in mid-November for some of those funds, and so we're keeping our eye on those opportunities and exploring where there might be cohesion with some of the contents of our action plan. Current areas of focus. I'm working with all of the city managers' offices to increase local government staff capacity. I've been meeting and chatting with the city managers' offices to identify what specific capacity building needs exist within the respective city staffs, and then to develop recommendations of specific trainings or increased capacity to appropriately meet those needs. We're also working on developing a system of tracking and reporting on the plan implementation. Like I said, the goal with this would be to be able, for example, to provide sum totals of how many assessments and one home entrances we have, rather than kind of anecdotally from some of the folks working on it. We have actually, before I onboarded into this role, I participated in a subgroup within the Tri-Cities policy group that, and several other folks in this room participated in that group as well, that brainstormed a list of metrics that we'd like to see kind of as indicators of the success of this plan. So I was given a spreadsheet when I onboarded. I've refined that spreadsheet and are actively working with community partners to kind of knock on their doors and see what type of data points they might be willing to share and contribute into a comprehensive dashboard that would track not just how the plan is being implemented, but actually the impact that the plan is having. At the end of the day, kind of asking the question, are we moving the needle in the way that we want to around this issue? We're also working to develop a regional communication strategy. This actually integrates several action steps within the broader action plan. So I've had 2 meetings with the communications staff from the Tri-Cities at this point. We're envisioning a dedicated Tri-Cities website as kind of the hub of a communication strategy, as well as supplementing with a coordinated approach to other comms activities such as social media, content, as well as possibly some community engagement events, things like that. And then we're actively working to support our Ready to Work partnership. Ready to Work is a nonprofit that has locations up in Boulder and Aurora. Actually, back in 2018, they got a grant from Google to replicate their model somewhere in the state of Colorado, and they chose Tri-Cities kind of because of the foundation of collaboration that we were laying. So we're proud of that. Like I said, they recently acquired a facility in South Inglewood, very close to the Oxford station, really great location, close to public transit. They'll be able to host 48 clients per year and move them through a transitional housing program with a specific focus on workforce development. So Ready to Work actually manages contracts to send their participants out into the workforce, provide them the support they need to learn some of those vocational skills, and then graduates them into a job placement and a housing placement at the end of that year. They boast a 75% program completion rate at their 2 existing locations, as well as an 80% housing and employment retention rate after 12 months, which is really good in the transitional housing world. So we're excited to see them come to the area. We've also been working to engage local school districts. The steering committee of the Tri-Cities Policy Group has been working on a coordinated approach to outreach to some of our educational partners in service of our family homelessness related category of the action plan. We are in the planning phases of creating a lived experience advisory board. This is a nationwide best practice to have the voice of lived experience speaking into any response of homelessness. And so we envision putting together a formal board of members who are compensated for their expertise, engaging quarterly meetings with formal reports to the policy group, and possibly maybe an annual event with the policy group and that board, and opportunities to kind of deepen relationships there and really in a formal capacity capture the voice of lived experience as we move forward with responding to the issue. And then finally, we are working on our Navigation Center project. In April, the Tri-Cities Homelessness Policy Group commissioned a subcommittee within that group to take point on developing the Navigation Center. That committee is comprised of representatives from all 3 city managers' offices, our Built for Zero case conferencing lead, some representatives from the South Metro Community Foundation, who's been fundraising towards the initiative. And we've identified a work plan of creating an RFP to accept bids from existing organizations to serve as the Navigation Center. And we're currently in the process of drafting that RFP, finalizing a funding mechanism, and we're anticipatory to see what type of responses we would get from putting an RFP out to see kind of who within our existing service provider community might be able to fit the bill for navigation services with some investment into their services. So those are our current areas of focus. I would anticipate several of these being scored as completed by year's end, which would put us right on track, I think, in terms of the 3-year plan implementation process. So with that, I will stop talking and would love to field any questions that you all may have.
Any questions for Mike? Joe?
Thank you. Mike, I was thinking about the HMIS, and you said you don't have the data on how much information has been entered and all of that. Who has access to that data? Can the service providers get on and pull a name list themselves, or are there only certain people who are allowed to do that? And then how do you get that data back into Inglewood to make it useful?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I don't have comprehensive data about the One Home system, which is a little bit distinct from the HMIS. The One Home is the coordinated entry system that would track how many folks from the Tri-Cities have been placed into housing through that particular program. HMIS tracks how many people are experiencing homelessness, and in terms of access to that data, the MDHI who manages that just asks for a release of information for anybody who would, kind of a data privacy agreement, because HMIS tracks some personal data, specific names, demographic information, where people are experiencing homelessness, and MDHI takes some steps to kind of protect privacy within that system, and so our case conferencing team all have access to the by name list, can pull those reports, but the MDHI just asks that you kind of sign a waiver of how you're going to use that data, that it wouldn't be distributed, personal information wouldn't be distributed publicly, things like that, which I think is fair, for managing private information about individuals. So all that to say, we would have capacity to pull current reports from HMIS in terms of numbers, but we wouldn't have capacity to kind of share any type of identifying information from that system. Victor?
Thank you, Mayor. Welcome, and I'm glad you're on board. The presentation you gave to us last week, I guess it was excellent. I really appreciate it. I liked what I heard. I guess with that said, we've been doing this for 3 years. It took us 3 years to get you hired, basically. We've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars so far. How many people have we actually housed at this point?
I would, like I said, actually, I neglected to mention that the outreach team, the PATH outreach team, I was just chatting with them yesterday. They've housed their first person in their soft launch in the last couple of weeks. We saw 8 people housed through 10 people housed through the One Home initiative last year. And then we anticipate that number scaling as Bridge House launches, again, client capacity of 48 folks per year with a 75% success rate. I can't do that math right from my head, but I think it's reasonable to expect we would see somewhere in the 30s through that program. Through Cross Purpose, we're seeing every person who graduates that program, the chances of either landing back on the streets or winding up on the streets is greatly reduced for all of those clients. And some of this data doesn't track some of the work that our service provider community is doing right now around case management, connecting people to housing resources, and so the best concrete answer I would say would be I think 11 right now. But again, as we work to put together some of those metrics, hopefully the dashboard would be able to spit out more comprehensive numbers.
And those are Rappaport County numbers, right?
Those are put together through the Inglewood case manager within the Inglewood Police Department, the housing navigators through Arapahoe County that actually work specifically within the Tri-Cities.
So that those numbers you gave us though are from Tri-City folks that were homeless or unhoused in our areas, right?
Right.
Good. Thank you very much.
Question. Oh, sorry.
You can go first.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, Mike, again for a fantastic presentation and just keep plugging ahead and doing that great work. This is more of like a personal question, but do you envision soliciting volunteer healthcare providers to help with this program in any capacity?
So one of our year 3 goals is to explore what it would look like to convene kind of a street healthcare team. We're seeing some good momentum in that direction with the launch of the MRU in Inglewood and hopefully throughout the region, throughout the Tri-Cities region in a couple months. And so that's certainly an opportunity to get involved. I know some of our existing service providers have some kind of healthcare components to the volunteer opportunities that they provide. And so I think if you have healthcare expertise and are interested in volunteering, we could find you a place.
Okay, perfect, thanks.
Russell.
Thank you. And I thank you for the presentation. Are we also tracking the success of the program? I know you've talked about how many people have been placed. Are we going to track how many of those people eventually leave and when they left and how they left? Are we going to be tracking that, or are we only tracking how many people we get placed?
When you say when they leave, does that mean when folks might lose housing or go back to the streets? Okay. There are several of our providers who do track that number. For example, the Ready to Work program tracks at a year whether folks have retained their housing as well as their employment. The One Home system also would track that through the HMIS system, and so I believe we can incorporate a data point like that within a dashboard. So
I appreciate that. I also have a question about providing housing for homeless on severe weather nights. Is Inglewood the only one doing that, or is Littleton and Sheridan providing places also?
The severe weather sheltering that we currently provide operates at a regional capacity. The Severe Weather Shelter Network has had such a tumultuous couple years with the shift into a motel model as well, and then this year they're shifting back into providing a congregate solution within church partners. Through the years, they've had church partners that provide shelter kind of throughout the region, several in Littleton, several even further south. I believe this year they have a partner in Inglewood, and then they also have rotations out in Lakewood and even up in Arvada as well, utilizing some of those church partners. But historically, the shelter options that they have provided have been at a regional scope.
Okay, so currently is Inglewood going to be the only one providing locations, or the churches or church in Littleton that's been providing in the past, are they continuing to provide that service?
I believe that the Severe Weather Shelter Network has kind of refined their model a little bit to where they're just partnering with one church for the sake of kind of logistical simplicity internally, and I believe that church this year is in Inglewood.
Because I have a problem with that. When people come into Inglewood, you see them all over, and you don't see that. I don't go into Sheridan as much. I mean, I do, but if we're not partnering, all of us, and Inglewood is gonna share the brunt of this, that's problematic to me. And it also seems to me that we're building this huge infrastructure and we haven't really are we working at all with places that are already doing homeless ministry and provisions, instead of just trying to build our own little network and reinventing the wheel?
I believe I hear a couple questions. One, I think that there are several elements of the action plan that call for partnership with existing organizations. For example, the Ready to Work program is an existing organization that we're partnering with. The Severe Weather Shelter Network is an existing organization that we're sheltering. Actually, the emergency shelter side of things doesn't factor into the action plan. The Cross Purpose is an existing organization, and so there are elements of the action plan that call for partnership with existing organizations, as well as some elements that do call for new initiatives. One example of maybe where we're kind of thinking on a regional scope would be around the Navigation Center. We recognize there's several communities who are looking at doing navigation work, possibly even at a larger capacity than what we need. And so as that subcommittee is putting together an RFP, we're really asking the question of what makes sense for the Tri-Cities community to, what type of scale makes sense for the Tri-Cities, and what opportunities do we have to partner with some of the larger initiatives that are taking place regionally, and maybe work for client referrals with some of our regional partners.
Thank you. And what are we doing to address substance abuse?
There's several elements within particularly the single adult system category that under the recommendation, I can pull it up here, of providing street-based services. The one good example would be the launch of the PATH program, making contacts with folks who are on the streets, making service referrals to whether that's mental illness, whether it's mental health, behavioral health, whether that's substance abuse care, things like that. We're working to make those referrals to those services, as well as several of our providers provide intensive case management for clients. Obviously, in a program, for example, like the Ready to Work program, if somebody isn't working on whatever issues or challenges they might have, substance use included, that program might not work for them. So the case managers internally at Ready to Work are going to be working specifically very focused with clients to get connected to services that they need around some of those issues.
Thank you. And are you looking into what things have not worked, because there are places like Seattle and San Francisco. I'm sure there's organizations like this there, and it hasn't worked. And I just don't want a black hole out there. These 3 cities cannot afford to support something like that, and we need to look at the other side also.
Yeah, and that's actually one of the reasons the Tri-Cities Policy Group decided to take a season of engaging research, familiarizing ourselves with nationwide best practices, and building an action plan in accordance with that research to make sure that we put together a plan that was in accordance with what we know to be best practice.
And have you found a place where there is a plan that works?
You know, several regional leaders, some of you may have seen in the news, just traveled to Houston and examined the system that they've established. And I actually it was in a meeting yesterday with one of the individuals who went on that trip, debriefing some of the things that they learned, what might be transferable for a Metro Denver community, what might not be transferable, things like that. So I think there are some, some kind of success stories nationwide that we're paying attention to, but homelessness is it's an issue nationwide. It's not just a Front Range or a Metro Denver challenge. Lots of metro areas nationwide are experiencing the tension of this.
And this was a big topic of conversation at the Metro Mayor's Caucus that I was at yesterday morning. We got presentations for Denver's social impact bond program that they had, and that was a success. And they talked about, the key is the housing. The idea of housing first, and there's a lot of misnomers about that it's not housing only, but people to accept and receive services need to have housing. There is a much more likelihood of utilizing those services if they're in housing, rather if there's barriers to receive the housing, then they're not going to receive the services. I might need a new computer.
I do.
So on that note, so that was one of the topics that we're talking about, is how it was working to get people into housing and then wrap services around that, which is real important.
I'll echo that. As a treatment provider, I'm an addiction counselor, and if we can't get housing, I can't do treatment.
Well, but
It's so
here's,
challenging.
okay, I understand that, but I also know that some of these people have been placed in housing and they get kicked out because they don't follow the rules. And housing first isn't really the solution. It's work first and then provide the housing. And
The research shows otherwise. They're saying is that the issue is the homelessness, it's the housing for people, and it's putting it together, requiring people to work for first before offering them housing. If you have a place to get dressed, to clean up, to eat, that allows them to be successful in the work and in the other services, and that's what,
do we have rules?
There's rules, but it's also, you have to be, you can't expect someone with substance abuse, you can't expect someone to stop cold turkey. There has to be, services provided to allow them to reach that point of success. And so that's what the conversation yesterday was. And it might be somewhat, difficult or uncomfortable for some people to realize, but the other options haven't worked. I know some of the examples you've given of you need to be able to do this before you get housing. That's if people that need housing it's a barrier to housing, and they're just going to say, fine, I'm not going to go do that.
And the reason I asked if we've already checked into some places that work, a couple of years ago, I went to a fundraiser for the Action Center in Lakewood. It is a huge organization that started in 1968 with a Quonset hut. And they had rules when people came, they would give them overnight housing. If they would follow the rule for that night, they would get another night. And then they kept increasing the time, and they had goals and things that they had to follow. A lot of the problem is, I think there are people out there, probably 20% of the people out there can get help and want help. 80% is mental illness and substance abuse.
And trauma.
And trauma?
Lots of trauma.
Okay, and so those people are more difficult to deal with. And all I'm saying is, I'm not averse to helping people. We need to, but we have a limited amount of taxpayer dollars that we can spend, and we need to make sure that we can afford this.
And I mean, this kind of goes into the next conversation with let's see if my soaking wet agenda affordable housing of, you know, people that have shelter are much more likely to get the help and seek the help that they need, rather than saying if they don't have it first. And so one of the other topics that we had was at the meeting yesterday was homeless activity around retail stores. And I know in other communities, especially Aurora and Lakewood, there's, you know, lots of problems with theft and people living on private property at these retail stores. And one of the things that they were saying, the retailers were saying, is you need to have emergency housing and affordable housing. You know, we need to have places where people can live and can work on the issues that they have, because they can't work on those issues if they're sleeping in a dumpster behind Walgreens. And so, you know, one of the things that we're doing in Littleton, I mentioned, is this inclusionary housing ordinance. And, you know, council's directed staff to come back to us with like a two-tiered approach. And what we're doing is having, the first tier is requirements for all new development that meet certain criteria, and that would be basically over 5 units to require that across the board. Provide some, you know, offsets and incentives to allow that to make it to number out there, and then also provide incentives for majority affordable units. And, you know, we'll have, like I said, this on first reading on the 18th, and then before us as a public hearing on November 1st. And I think, you know, before, as our city attorney mentioned at our meeting the other night, that, you know, previously we didn't have the tools to be able to do this, and now that we do. So we're, you know, taking the first step to see how can we not only encourage but require units be built that are affordable for people like that. So I don't know if anyone has questions about that, or if anyone, city staff, has anything more to chime in, or any of my council. Councilmember Barr?
Yeah, I just wanted to say too that I agree that there, you know, the provision of homelessness services, especially amongst a variety of nonprofit organizations, can ultimately lead to this kind of never-ending black hole of just service provision, rather than, like you were saying, Mayor, tackling the core issue of housing. And some of the low-hanging fruit that's out there are things like rental bridge grants or loans to families that might be that are on the edge of experiencing homelessness. And I know Arapahoe County has a fund dedicated to this. Do you know where that fund stands in terms of actual fiscal support? Like, how, you know, is there increased investment needed there? Because I think for dollar for keeping someone in a home healthy, safe, secure, that is one of the better ways to do it. And again, least costly for most effective outcome. So can you tell us a little bit about what the county's been doing and how much more investment might be needed in the future?
Yeah, it's actually one of my new colleagues in the Community Resources Department who runs that program, the rent assistance and eviction prevention. It's still active. They're staying plenty busy with demand, and the program continues to be funded for now. I believe it's still funded through stimulus, and so that obviously has an end date. I don't know that even the program knows specifically when that end date will be, but it's doing good work for now. And when we start to approach kind of an end date, you know, a conversation will be had about whether a service like that continues to be needed and to what scale.
And thank you for that. And to follow on in terms of low-hanging fruit, there are some other policy recommendations that I think all three cities could essentially could consider in the future, and best if we coordinate on some of those policies, like, for example, safe parking ordinances, which, you know, again, low-hanging fruit doesn't cost us a whole heck of a lot in terms of being able to pass policies like that. Are you planning on proposing these kinds of policy changes to the three cities?
I'll say, I think my role would be to provide perspective, provide input on the policy decisions that the respective cities make. But that's ultimately the decision of each city to kind of craft and decide what policy solutions make the most sense for their community. The action plan does in year 2 call for the piloting of a safe parking initiative, exploring what that would look like for folks who are staying in their car at night. Maybe I've personally known several people who are trying to hold down a job, sleeping in their car at night, trying to save up for that first month's rent deposit, and just trying to find a place to park every night can be challenging. And so a year 2 goal is to pilot what a program like that would look like to provide some support to folks in that situation.
Thank you.
So I'm in complete agreement with you in terms of the inclusionary housing, but I guess one aspect of it that I'm kind of curious about, do you guys have projections in terms of how many 30% AMI, 50% AMI units may go up in Inglewood or
Inglewood, I don't know.
But do you have an estimate of it? Because the other aspect of it that we talked about is just the supply is what's causing a lot of the affordability issues. So I'm just kind of curious from your perspective if you have those projections.
I think Kathleen might handle that.
Yeah, good morning, Kathleen Osher, Community Services Director. So I've been spearheading the inclusionary housing effort here in Littleton. We don't have specific projections on that. We are focused on 60% AMI, particularly with our first tier, which is mandatory for all development. And then our second tier is for majority affordable development, so that would include our housing authority. We've also seen a great cooperation with Habitat for Humanity. So we anticipate seeing a lot of movement in that 30 or even below 30%. So I know our most recent project that just is turning ground, the overlook along Flowers Avenue with Adelotti, is a new project, and that spans anywhere from 30 to 60% AMI and is focused on supporting seniors in our community. So that's where we expect to see that movement most, is in that second tier.
Thank you.
Sorry, just on the same point, if you might spend just a minute on the fees in lieu of housing that we think are gonna be a really important tool for leveraging city funding with other funding to really create units. I don't know.
Yeah, so I think our mayor already mentioned, so we're looking at a 5% in terms of that for the mandatory piece, so 5% of projects at 5 units or more. What we anticipate with that though is that we've set the fee in lieu very high. I think we've already gotten some, critical thinking from the state that 5% feels really low as compared to other communities, but our council has been very clear, they're very focused on the production of these units and seeing them come to fruition. So our fee in lieu is at 75% of the cost of construction for a unit, so that puts it roughly at $275,000 per unit. So we anticipate with the funding that the state has currently, hopefully the success of measures like statewide Proposal 123 or Initiative 123, infusing roughly $300 million into affordable housing in the state. Council supported that resolution on Tuesday night. So we anticipate that finding that other 25% puts us in a really good position to work with our majority affordable developers to really see the realization of those units.
Real quick, and I'm sorry, Mayor, you answered most of them.
Oh,
but
yeah.
the one, and we'll get together
Yeah.
offline on this, because this is on our to-do list, and I'm very, very interested in what you guys. How did you come up with 5? That seems like I like listen, I like where you're going with this, with a very high fee in lieu. I like that, and I like your low threshold on your 5. How did you come to those?
Okay, so some background, right? We have not updated holistically our land use and zoning code since 1976. We have brand new land use code in place adopted last year. We know that that has caused some disruption in terms of what we'll see for development in the community. So we took a very hard look and analysis of the pro forma of average projects.
Okay.
So we knew that put us anywhere between 3 and 8%. That 5% monkeyed less with the overall pro forma. We also know for very sophisticated developers that may make that the path for fee in lieu might be more attractive to them, and we're gonna see that as a major win.
Right.
Because again, 75% of the construction costs of a unit we can translate that into the production of a unit with people that really specialize. So it was really that pro forma. All of the analysis that we did has been part of our council packet, so if anyone would like to take a look at that.
Yeah,
that
at
is
some
available
point
for
I'd
that.
love to see that,
And
so.
you can also, I'm Kosher at littletongov.org, so kosher.
Thank you for sharing,
community.
appreciate
Yeah.
it.
Alright.
I'm also cognizant of time, we're at 8:45. Do we have, and I believe we have another.
I think we've kind of already merged into the next
Okay,
discussion on
perfect.
housing here, so you
Yeah,
can stay there.
that's great.
We'll keep you up here if people have any other questions for you, but.
Good job, thank you, Mike.
Yes,
Yeah,
thank you.
thank you. Do either of the other mayors have anything on the affordable, housing
Yeah, I
efforts?
guess I could just tell into that aspect of it, but yeah, we had a housing assessment done back in September. And basically showed what we all know is just the fact that the supply at 30 and 50% is so much lower than the demand at this point. So obviously, as part of this Code Next project that we're looking doing, we've talked about inclusionary housing, we talked about workforce housing. So obviously, those conversations are going to continue to move forward here in the next few months. But obviously, it's something that we need to tackle.
Is it something you're gonna consider doing the inclusionary housing with the code update as well? Cause I know that was one of the criticisms that we've heard, that we didn't do it. I mean, but it was such a big lift, I think doing the step process was appropriate for.
Sean, do you know if that's coming back in November as part of it, or?
It's coming back, but our council directed our housing assessment people not to bring back inclusionary zoning. It's 6-1, I think.
Yeah, well, we have a couple new developments. We have the Bonsai Redevelopment. I think we've talked about this maybe at some of the other meetings, but it's gonna be at the old Bonsai Nursery site on Federal Boulevard. About 150 units, and those will be 30 to 60% AMI, so that's, exciting for our community. And they're also gonna work with our housing authority for putting people in that development who have vouchers.
Is that a tax credit property?
Yes.
Light tech credits for that.
And then the Inglewood Housing Authority actually owns some lots in Sheridan at the end of my street. That eventually they'll be developing those into, I think it's about 30 larger, like 3 to 4 bedroom units for low income housing. So those are both upcoming, and of course we have Sheridan Square. We'll just keep trumpeting Sheridan Square. It's been a couple of years now, but we're so excited to have, that habitat development, and it's really been, I think, a boon to our community. So if you have an opportunity, if you have the space, I really encourage you to look at getting a larger habitat development like that in your communities, because I think it has really revitalized, particularly that area of our city.
Where is that exactly? I'm sorry.
It's like north of the high school, so it's like west of Federal, north of Oxford. It's kind of tucked away a few streets off of Federal, but we have so many, young families and immigrant families. It's just so dynamic, and they're very involved in their own community, and it's just I would say really one of the more exciting places to be in our city at this point. So I mean, I just I really encourage it for you if you feel like some of your wards might be getting a little complacent, a little sleepy. It would shake it up a little.
Wake it up.
Yeah.
There's things going on all the time there. Yeah.
Good things.
No, it totally turned that neighborhood around. Completely and totally turned that neighborhood. It's the largest habitat development that they've ever done in Colorado. So 63 or 4 units, something like that. Yeah, and they're happy to. You can just contact them, they'll give you all the info on it. It's a nice project.
Yeah.
And that's the tax credit you're talking about?
No, that was a habitat bill. Yeah.
And how are they being funded?
Well, they are funded, I'm not an expert on this, but mostly through donations. It's my understanding is where Habitat gets their money.
And the land was donated by our school district, so.
Yeah.
And then as Devin mentioned, we may take a look at the inclusionary housing and also impact fees, which maybe you have more to say on, but.
Not really.
Yeah.
Not right now.
Are there any other questions or comments about affordable housing programs? Yeah, Councilman Belize.
If you could send out those numbers, what I'd asked you, what numbers the Tri-Cities are being affected by, could you send those out to us? And a little bit of more data on that to kind of verify where they're coming from?
Yeah, I'll send out the data points we have right now.
Thank you, appreciate it. That's it.
Great. I think we can move on to the next item, which is an update on the Santa Fe PEL. So we have to introduce.
I'll try and get you out of here by 9.
Sure. I'm leaving at 9, so.
I know, so am I, it's fine. So I'm Keith Reister, I'm the Public Works and Utilities Director. I appreciate Devin's email yesterday.
In my apology, Andrew Rogie from my staff was gonna be here, and I looked at this agenda 2 days ago and had one of those, oh crap, I forgot to tell Andrew that he gets to do this. And he's currently giving a tour of the Bear Creek Trail to a group that is going to hopefully fund a grant for us for that, so I told him to stay there and do that. So my apologies.
Those of us who are on the team see each other plenty enough, so we're okay. So the PEL, Planning Environmental Linkages Study that all the communities that you see up there plus CDOT partnered on over the last basically year and a half to really define the future of Santa Fe. Basically running from Denver to 470 is coming to a conclusion. I know that our council is gonna see a presentation by our staff in CDOT, I think next week or the week after. And I know that the other communities are lining that up as well, so that you'll be able to see that. Just a quick overview. This was the boundaries of the project. I think most of you are familiar with that at this point in time as the project limits. You know, our goals in this were really threefold: safety, operational performance improvement, and multimodal connections throughout the corridor. As we all know, this corridor developed over literally decades. You know, this was part of the original Can-Am Highway, going north to south before the interstates were built, is how long this piece of road has been here. That's developed up around it. So this right here, in much detail that you can't read, is the summary of recommended project actions that could potentially be done within the next 10-year time span. The stuff that you see in green are multimodal. The stuff that's in blue are related to operational improvements. And then the purple are right-of-way preservation areas for future places where we know needs are gonna be. Some of the, beyond what you see in this picture, these are some of the things that'll be part of all of these as they tie together. Corridor wide. Pedestrian detection signals, enhanced communications, you know, basic high-level traffic management infrastructure, a traffic operations center supporting all of the signals, because right now we've got about, 9 different jurisdictions between all of us controlling signals. Working our way towards that kind of stuff. And the other side of that too is those are also places where we're gonna see the most impact from a sustainability standpoint, improve traffic modeling and signals, really enhance that, reduce your emissions. So those are the kind of things that we'll work through. Incident management planning, multi-jurisdictional. Right now, we kind of rely on the fire departments to do that, and we'd really like to look at that as a more solid operational corridor, so if something goes down along the corridor, we can still continue to operate it for the businesses in the communities. These are some smaller pictures just that show each of the segments kind of working south to north. So this is sort of down in the Douglas County Littleton section from 470 at the bottom of the picture, working your way up. This is the Littleton section. I'll talk about the early action projects here in a minute. But that's a number of the things that we have. A vast majority of ours are really multimodal improvements and connectivity that's been previously identified. Especially, one of the problems we have in this whole corridor is east-west connectivity. It's like a bifurcation of almost all of our communities, especially from a multimodal standpoint. So there's been work previous to this that's helped identify that, and so that's been worked into this plan as well. This is in the Inglewood section. And then further north towards Sheridan. and then up here.
What part is the Sheridan part on that, on Santa Fe?
I'm sorry?
What part is Santa Fe Sheridan? I know which part Inglewood. Oh, River Point, is that, do you go all the way to Santa Fe?
So Sheridan goes just to the east of 285, or
West.
85, sorry. And just to the east, so we come just over the highway, so actually the entire highway is in Sheridan.
And then, so what part is Inglewood then?
South of there.
South of that.
So, and so what is the south end of yours then?
It's almost Union, it just depends on,
Union?
it kind of
It
wibbles wobbles
jigs
there.
and jags, it jigs and jags, but I would say Union is a good.
Yeah, okay. I didn't realize that was Sheridan, that's it.
Yeah, just check and see who tickets are more expensive,
Yeah.
you're gonna spend. If you're deciding which jurisdiction to speed in.
What do you know about tickets, Keith?
I don't know anything about them. So, just kind of to wrap it up and let you go from here is, so one of the big questions whenever you do move to your study like this is, so what about the future? So the stuff that you identified can be accomplished in the next 10 years. One of the things I did give CDOT a little bit of rib about is the fact that in their long-term presentation, which I pulled these from, they have all the pictures of lots of traffic in the intersections from Littleton. I don't know if they're revenge on us or what, or starting this process, but right now there's 3 projects plus some other smaller ones underway that are being funded 100% through CDOT Faster Safety Funds. That's the funding that comes from vehicle registrations, which are actually up over the last couple of years. There's no local match to those, and CDOT's moving those forward, and they're primarily targeted towards safety projects. The most visible one at this point in time is if you're coming southbound on Santa Fe after you leave 25, and all that work that's gone along on the golf course on the west side. That's signalization, that's turn lanes, that's pedestrian safety, all of that is probably the most visible early action project to date. All of us as partners at the staff level are working with CDOT, with Dr. Cog, and with the TIP process to work our way towards supplemental funding for the future, the other projects going forward over the next decade. And that's progressing pretty well. Obviously, if you haven't been involved, this year's TIP cycle is one of the most unique and interesting processes we've ever had to try and secure funds for all of us. So that's the slides I put together today, just as a summary of where we are. I know that each of your cities are planning on doing a specific kind of update on the plan and how it affects your jurisdiction specifically, and then the whole. So it's great. It's been 2+ years, and this has taken a huge multi-jurisdictional effort, both at the staff level, at CDOT, at this level, and the community level to really get to this point. And it's a big leap forward for all of us to really have this. Plus, it'll all tie into our land use and economic development plans over time, which is critical in the long run as well.
Any questions for Keith? Yeah.
Is it possible for city councils to get the PowerPoint presentations from all of the cities?
Actually, I pulled this out of one master CDOT presentation. So all of this and all of each individual cities is contained in that master presentation. So
We'll make sure we
yeah.
can get
So-
the slides to each city.
What's a channelized T? I see that listed there a lot. Can you describe?
A channelized T is it's basically a median that reduces the amount of turns going the other way. It reduces your potential for cross lane impacts by controlling stacking, is what they are really. It's just a median with a pocketed turn lane.
Okay.
But traffic engineers gotta have more interesting names than that confuse everybody else. You know, that's one of their objectives, I think, in the MUTCD manual. So.
Well, great. Well, I just want to thank everyone for coming. We probably could have had a whole day meeting on this. You know, these topics. You know, transportation, housing, homelessness that's kind of the big important things we're all dealing with, and all the communities metro-wide are dealing with. And you know, as Keith said, you know, it's important for us to work together multi-jurisdictionally. So having us come together and hear about these things is important. But I just want to give a shout out to at least our staff, and I know a shout out to your staff, because that's who's doing the heavy lifting with this, and they're the ones talking with each other day to day. So I just want to thank them for all their hard work and keeping keeping things going that way, so.
Thank you for hosting us.
Yeah, thank you, thanks for coming here. You know, if you guys wanna stay and chat, please feel free, I got another meeting, hopefully I won't knock my water on my computer that time.
Yeah, really.
Great, thanks.
You're the mayor, you can just ask for a new computer.
That's correct.
Can I get
I need my room on the ground.
Great, I get to work with them on the sound.
Really? I usually have my lips down. My wife knocked it over, I didn't realize water.
I had talked to him before at conferences, but not in depth, but we got to know each other pretty well.
Yeah.
He's a great guy. I was in Long Beach, he went out to San Diego, so I know he'll do great things.
You guys.
Inclusionary housing.
Slip it over the top. We thought I'd have it done on. It's gonna be
Particularly after
If you really want me to set you in.
This was actually more so.
I see it.
I see it. I've enjoyed this council.
I'm eager to see it too. You're resting on laurels. Same parking ordinance. Which one? Same parking. Yeah, so this hasn't come to my attention. I feel like it just did. Safe parking.
Yeah. Oh, really?
Oh, well, okay. I know it's challenge. In the sense where we had a church, we wanted to temporarily house vehicles. And the issue was that could change. The issue was churches are residential zoning areas. And the challenge being that allowing them to sleep, stay in their cars overnight is a violation of that residential. So, and then you have the community meetings where if
Email all the time.
So,
I see your face.
Bye. Yeah,
Well, how was the breakfast? You ever used it?
Yeah, temporary. Well, here's where you get to the gray area. So, and we brought it up, or Mike brought it up, you know, the shelter. And that's a regional thing. I mean, that's not like Littleton, Inglewood. No. We go all the way up. It's we've allowed churches to do it. So technically, it's a violation of your zoning. You're allowing people to be housed in your church overnight or during a day or for a few days. We kind of turned a blind eye to some of that. Obviously, the issues we used to run into was, you know, they're essentially just throwing these people in a basement. It's a safety issue. So we would have to work with some Metro Fire to get them to sign up on. So slippage. I think the safe camping spaces are even a better idea than the occupied building. The issue is the issue that you'll hear from residents that are concerned, you know, they'll get concerned about what they think that they're gonna see as crowd, and all this stuff. But
Let's get it.
The whole bathroom situation is an issue that comes up regardless of whether people are seeing it or not, because they know that, okay, that person hasn't left that area in 48 hours. I know they've been going in the bathroom somewhere.
Yeah, and I can't really
See them doing it or not, they're shitting in the yard. So that's why